Hello, my fellow Americans. This is Bill Lipinski, and the program is Two Guys on Politics. And up next is the most important guy, my partner, Ray Hanania.
And this is Ray Hanania, and it is August 15, 2024, Season 3, Episode 24. And our topic is Bill and I are going to look at the Democratic Convention, which starts Monday, August 19th through the 22nd. And we're also going to look at how former President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris are trending. Who's leading at this point? You know, who's going up, who's going down, and maybe talk about some of the issues. Bill, we got the convention coming up. Is it going to be a typical convention? You think it'll be, remember we talked about there might be third-party disruption, you know, because of state primaries and fighting and stuff. But what do you think is going to happen at the convention?
Well, I think that this convention has the potential of being as violent as the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago. And I say that with a heavy heart because I don't want to see that happen. But I think that with all the forces surrounding this convention, the problem with the situation in the Middle East, the problem with Joe Biden being forced out by the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, and the new presidential candidate for the Democrats, and the new the new vice presidential candidate for the Democrats, I think there could be potential for an awful lot of disruption. I know for a fact that many businesses in the city of Chicago are really almost closing down for this coming week. They're going to have the vast majority of their employees work at home because they don't want them to get involved in any of the demonstrations that might be going on. And of course, the demonstrators are extremely unhappy with what the Democrats have allowed them to do as far as demonstrating. They've been to court. The court has upheld the Democrats' position. So these people are not happy at all. And I do not believe that they are going to follow the rules, let us say. I think they're going to demonstrate whatever way that they want to demonstrate. And I think it could get to be ugly. I hope I'm wrong. I don't want to see a bad mark for my city, but it happened in '68. I think it could happen again.
Yeah, listen, I think there is going to be a big problem in the Democratic National Convention, mainly because of the tyrants who are running the convention, not just because they want to restrict the public from engaging, but this entire 6 months has been run by Democratic tyranny, Democratic Party tyranny, trying to shut down third-party candidates, trying to manipulate who's going to run for office, trying to empower and embolden, at the time, President Joe Biden, who they knew was very weak, and they needed to do stuff to block and prevent democracy from doing what it always does, allowing people to express themselves and allowing things to kind of average out. So I blame the Democratic Party for this entire mess. I think it's a huge mistake to be overly restrictive of protesters, because all that's going to do is provoke the protesters to do more. And I also think it's ridiculous that in our democracy, where politics is so important, these people are elected by the American people, that the American people have no real voice in this convention whatsoever. They can't protest this manipulation by the Democratic Party. And part of it, obviously, is they're upset with the Democrats are upset with the Arab, Muslim, and the supporters among the African American community, who are going to be the main protesters against the party. And I think that's only going to force these traditionally Democratic voters to run to the third party and further weaken the Democratic Party and result in Donald Trump getting elected. So their efforts to be too stern, it's like a parent. When you have a kid, the harder you push them to do something, the more the kid is going to resist. And if we haven't learned that, you and I are seniors. We know that the worst thing to do is to be too harsh on a kid. And they will rebel. And I think that that's what we're going to see. I agree with you. This is going to be a much more violent convention than we've seen in the past. And I think it's based on what we've seen in the way they've already treated the protesters, at universities around the country, beating them up, arresting them, charging them, demonizing them. I think the Democratic Party is screwed and they are in trouble. And this convention is just going to make it worse.
Well, I don't, I'm saying that this convention has the potential to cause all of those problems. And I think that it's going to happen. I hope that it doesn't happen. I don't want to see the city get a black eye. I don't care to see the Democratic Party get a black eye. But if it does happen, they will have brought it upon themselves. They now have a candidate for president who did not win one single primary election. That's number one.
Right.
Number two, they have a candidate that is their vice presidential candidate. And I don't mean to put anything very sinister on this, but I would like to know why he made 35 trips to communist China over the course of the last 30 or 40 years. That really bothers me that he would be going. Now, I know the first time he went there was to teach English to some people over there. But why has he gone back another 34 times?
I'm sure former President Trump is going to say it was to help hide Hunter Biden's money in China. He's probably gone there to protect the Biden family. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I think the question of what was he doing there, that you raise a really important question. Why so many trips to China? China is not our friend.
Why have we not been able to get so far any information on why he took those trips? And if there is that information out there and I have missed it somehow, I want to apologize. But I don't think that I have missed it because I don't think it's out there. And I have tried researching it and I haven't found it anyplace. I'm surprised that your buddy, Robert Kennedy Jr., hasn't brought it up in his campaigning. Of course, he may have brought it up in his campaigning, but the news media doesn't seem to say anything about what he has to say anymore as far as his campaigning goes.
Now, I've been a big fan of Robert F. Kennedy for one reason. I think it'll take a Kennedy to expose the truth about what happened in the JFK assassination. Maybe one day we'll really find out. It's been long enough. They continue to hide a lot of those records. They won't release them. And I think that's wrong. But I think the bigger problem for Kennedy, and just to kind of mention him here, he's done a terrible job of campaigning. He relies on social media. He relies on an e-newsletter. He doesn't know how to put a press release out that addresses specific issues that are important to the American people. It's not enough to send an e-newsletter to your friends and say, hey, I support creating more jobs. Please donate money to my campaign. That's not what creates news. What he should be doing is holding press conferences to announce programs to help the American people. And I don't hear him doing that. In all fairness, we are hearing Harris and Trump do that, but they need to do it more also. I don't think there's enough about what they would do for our people. But down the line, I think Kennedy is among the worst in terms of what it is he wants to do. I think that Jill Stein, who, as an Arab, I'm probably going to be forced to vote for because I cannot support a Democratic Party, which we'll talk about this later, that is censoring all these protests. That we'll talk about now, that is censoring all these protesters and that's manipulated politics. I can't support a party like that because that's not the real Democratic Party that I grew up and supported all the way since I abandoned the Republicans after my candidate, AUH2O, Barry Goldwater, lost the presidency. Way back when.
That was a long, long time ago. In
And
your
I've been a
heart,
Democrat in Chicago ever since.
in your heart, though, you knew he was right. You remember
Well,
that?
yeah, yes. I remember, they beat up on Goldwater because of using that atomic bomb image. Remember that big mushroom? They
Oh
said
yes,
he's scaring the people, but the truth is that that fear continues to exist until this day. The world is not a safe place. We have weak leaders and we have war breaking out every place. And it's almost like we have no control over it. We used to be in control, whether we would be winning or losing. Now we have no control winning and losing. And I think that's far worse.
well, I don't know. I don't know what to
I didn't
say to
mean to
that.
shock you, Bill.
Uh, I know things are not good. I'm just going to jump in here for a second and say it's an
Go ahead.
entirely subject. But I was talking to my grandson today. He's 24 years of age, and he was saying that, and I don't really know why it came up, but he was saying he feels it was terrible that when he was going to school, high school and college, that there were so many professors who continually pointed out all the negative things about this country. They didn't point out any of the positive
Right,
things, negative things. And
right.
I personally believe that's a conspiracy to bring this country down. And I think that's something that we should cover in the future. In fact, it might be a bad idea to have someone like my grandson, come on and
Explain
tell us
it.
firsthand, how he felt that his teachers continually told him about
Well,
negative about this country. But we
well,
have to.
see, I believe that pattern of beating self-deprecating history and beating ourselves up, which we learned in school, is a result of the misguided belief that the way to freedom is to criticize yourself. I think the way to freedom is to be fair to people and treat people honestly and equally. And I don't think we actually do that. So, what they do is they deflect from what they should be doing by talking about our problems and by saying, oh, well, we do this or we do that and it's wrong. And then it forces us to look at things that really should evolve on their own, rather than addressing real issues like why aren't we treating everybody equally the way we really should be treating people, whether we agree with them or not? Why isn't the news media more objective and being held to put their feet to the fire to ensure that they're journalists, not political activists because they happen to like one party over another party? So, but I think that that's the result, of what your grandson is seeing, and what he's talking about. I think that comes from the failure for us to embrace democracy fully the way we should be embracing it.
Well, if this country is so bad, how come we have these thousands and thousands and thousands of people coming across our border at whatever risk they have to take to get into this country? Why is it that this country has the highest immigration rate of any nation on earth if we are such a bad place to live? Doesn't
Well,
make any sense to me.
well, here's the answer to that. Those people aren't coming from other democracies. Those people are coming from tyrannies and dictatorships where they're coming thinking that their vision of democracy, they're not seeing the reality of the United States. And I'm not saying the United States is bad. I'm not saying our democracy is bad. I'm saying we have flaws, but they're
Oh,
not seeing that. They're fleeing tyranny, which is not undemocratic countries wanting to come to a democracy where they've been told you will be treated fairly and equal. And it's been bastardized by politics in this country to open the door for illegal immigrants and migrants because, well, we identify with them, but shutting the door to certain people because we don't agree with them or we don't, support them. That's why people are running to this country. They're not running here because they think our democracy is great. They're running here because we are a quote unquote democracy.
Well, I think they are running here because they think we're great. They're running here because they think the streets are indeed paved with gold. Now, you and I know it's not paved with gold, but you and I also know that if you work hard, you keep your nose to the grindstone,
Yes.
you can become successful in this country. You can make money. You can enjoy a new home, a new car. We haven't lost too much democracy so far that we are not, pinned down by governments with so much socialism. We're getting off the track here, and I want to get back on.
Well, I think that I think despite all our faults, I think we are far better than any other country in the world. I just feel that we could still be better ourselves by addressing those faults. And you're right. I kind of misspoke. I didn't mean to say that we're not, that they were coming here because they believe that this is a great democracy. But they don't see the problems that we have once you're in this democracy that's really weakening us and not doing enough. Now, you and I both know that none of these issues are going to be addressed in next week's Democratic convention, right? They're not going to be talking about the real issues. What do you think they're going to be talking about?
They're going to be talking about how great the new presidential candidate is, what a magnificent smile she has, how she loves to talk to people, what a great personality she has, how much she'll defend democracy, how much she'll defend the American way of life. And the candidate for vice president will be doing the same thing. I wonder if he's going to suggest that we do on a nationwide basis, if we give free breakfast and lunches to all students. Now, when they say free, what they mean is the taxpayers will pay for your breakfast and for your lunch. Now, that's ludicrous what he's done in Minnesota. You have children who come from families that are making $1 million a year, and they're getting free breakfast, free lunches. Unfortunately, the government
it's not free.
You know what that is? That's socialism. Yeah. That's socialism. Yes. He's also the guy that has given driver's license to all these illegal immigrants that are in this country. Now, people would say, well, that's good. They get an opportunity then to buy insurance. So when they have an accident, the poor person.
Instead of running and hiding, right?
Exactly, yes.
Listen, when I was a kid, my mother came to school. She was a legal immigrant who swore allegiance to this country, learned English, learned the Constitution. That she actually went to a class to become a citizen because she respected the vision of what America was. People that come here today don't respect what we are. They see us as an opportunity rather than becoming part of our family. They want to bring their own thing here and do what they've been doing someplace else. They want to just do it here. And I think that's part of the problem. But when I was a kid, my mother would go to school. She would volunteer, bring our sandwiches, and she would be a lunch mom for free. Nobody paid her to help those kids who couldn't go home because their parents, were both working or they were a single parent family. But she would volunteer the time at lunch for all those kids, and we would be there eating with all these kids. And a lot of parents who were able to do that did that. And yet my mother still had a second job while my dad worked. We managed to figure out how to make it work. Today, it's so much easier to be on welfare, not have a job, collect money, and say, hey, the government's going to give me everything I need. Why do I need to get it myself?
Well, the immigrants get the cell phones, a place to stay. Now they're going to get driver's licenses in various places. Don't people understand that these individuals broke the law by coming into this country illegally? They should not be rewarded by being given cell phones, places to stay, an opportunity to drive a car. It doesn't make any sense. But Ray, we got to get off of this. We're supposed to be talking about.
Well, the convention should be talking about this, but they're not going to be talking about the aspect of it that we are. They're going to say they're the party to welcome the immigrants. They won't say we're welcoming illegal immigrants too, they're going to merge everybody into one big vague blur and say that Trump is anti-immigrant, he's anti-minority, he's anti-black, he's anti-Arab, he's anti-Muslim, he's anti-Hispanic, he's anti-whoever they hope to get as voters for their party. I'm telling you that this convention, it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to cover up the flaws that are fundamental in the floor of the Democratic Party, these cracks that nobody wants to address, and they hope someday may go away without doing anything. They're not going to go away. This party the Democratic Party is going to be very weak. She's going to get a bump though, right? She'll get a honeymoon bump, a positive surge in the polls, right?
Yeah, there's no question. Yeah, the Democratic convention will give her a surge in the polls. Talking about her, do you think she'll ever sit down for an interview?
No, I honestly, that's the new thing now. Nobody has to answer to the American people because they don't need to be interviewed by the media. Because in the old days, you would sit down to do an interview to convince the media that what you were saying was right. These days, you don't need to waste your time convincing the media that you're right because the media is already partisan and they've already lined up with Harris or they've lined up with Trump. I think most of them are with Harris. Why should she sit down when the media is already doing her PR? They're the propagandists and the PR spokespeople for Harris. She doesn't need to do an interview. The media is going to protect her and prevent her from being held accountable to answer the tough questions that 30 years ago, a candidate would have been forced to address. They're not being forced to address that today.
Well, as you say, the news media really is a wing of the Democratic Party now. There's absolutely no question about it. There are a few isolated media locations that will try to give you that objective opinion. I'm not talking about Fox, because I've watched Fox from time to time.
Right.
And believe me, they are as dishonest about political candidates and issues as any one of the mainstream networks or the old traditional networks are in behalf of the Democratic Party. Now, this country has to wake up and realize that if we don't start getting back to having a news media that is truly objective in working in behalf of the American people and not in behalf of a particular political party, we are going to go down the drain. It's as simple as
I totally agree with you. I think, just because the major mainstream media, the majority, are supporting Harris and the Democrats, doesn't mean that there's not a Republican media faction doing the same thing with Trump. Elon Musk from Twitter, social media with I don't know how many hundreds of millions of followers he has, had a conversation with Trump that lasted 2 hours. He sounded like a Middle East dictator the way Trump was talking. Who talks for 2 hours? And when you want to say, what is he talking about? There was no focus. There was no form. The most effective speech is when you have 5 issues, 5 bullet points, and you concisely and simply explain it to the public, and you do that in 20, 30 minutes max. And the public can recognize it, and you can be effective. But to ramble on, I like Elon Musk. I love what he's done with Twitter. He's silenced the far left fanatics who really were trying to brutalize anybody they didn't agree with. But I just thought that the media on the right is as bad as the media on the left, although the media on the left is far bigger than the media on the right, I think. And you're right. What's in the middle? You and I like to think, we're honest. I'm not carrying anybody's water. And I know you're not. I mean, we say things that sometimes it hurts, to say this stuff.
I wouldn't vote for either Trump or Harris. My hope is that whichever one of them get elected president, that there will be at least one house, the House of Representatives or the Senate, that will be in the hands of the other party to be a check on whoever the president is, because I am very concerned. To me, one of them, in all honesty, I say this, and I think it's a terrible thing to say, but I think one of them is a fascist and one of them is a socialist, okay? And I don't think that either one of them should be president of the United States. And I'm not going to contribute to that by voting for one or the other. But by the same token, we have to have a check on those people. And the people of this country have to get back and be really interested in politics and take over these parties and really have them become American parties once again, interested in representing all American citizens and not perpetuating the leaders of these parties in power.
And I agree with you. And just for our listeners, just to drive home your point, which I think is so on target. If Harris wins, we need to make sure Republicans have a strong presence and control at least the House.
Right.
If Trump wins, then we need to make sure that the Democrats at least have a strong presence and control the House, because then it forces accountability and it forces a balance where no one can do anything unless they're forced to come together. But if one party controls the presidency and the House and the Senate, regardless of whether it's Harris or whether it's Trump, we are in real trouble. I totally agree. Any chance you think Robert F. Kennedy can wake up from this, whatever situation he's in, change his tactic? There's still time. The Democrats have completely flipped, have a new candidate. He could completely flip and become a new candidate and present an alternative. Is there any chance at all?
I don't think so, because I don't think the news media will give him any shot at being able to become a significant force in this campaign. Early on, when they didn't take him seriously at all, they did give him some time on radio and TV, and he did at one time reach 20% in polling.
Yeah.
I don't know where he's at now, but I doubt very seriously he's still at 20%, because I never see him or hear him any longer on radio or television. And there has to be a deliberate attempt, I believe, to keep him out of the news.
Yeah, when we first started this, I was a big Kennedy fan until he just started drifting further and further to the right. And it just became, instead of talking about issues, it became more part of the political pablum or political blur that we have in this country. So at this moment, just to kind of bring it to an end, there is one chance, though, right, at the convention that a challenger could step up. It doesn't look like that's going to happen, but there's always a possibility in a convention. This is an open convention, basically, right?
Well, they had
these delegates.
They had that vote online, and the overwhelming majority of people voted for her to be the presidential candidate. I don't know if that can be reversed at the convention or not. Some people say yes, other people say no. Since the powers to be in the Democratic Party want her, I'm going to say no, it can't be reversed. They're going to say the election is over. She is our candidate for president.
So in other words, the Democrats just made up a system and said, hey, let's vote online, which I don't know. Did somebody pass a law that say, hey, if a president steps down, let's have an online vote just to the party leaders and delegates and decide who we're going to support? I thought the way the old true democracy was that when a president decides not to run, the delegates in the convention are free to vote what is their conscience. They don't do it in closed doors, smoke-filled closed door rooms online, smoke-filled online rooms and social media rooms. They do it in front of the American people at the convention there. And that's another example of everything that the Democratic Party is doing wrong that has made many Americans, I'm not saying every American, but enough of them to lose faith in the Democratic Party and wander off and support other candidates. I don't trust them anymore. That was another example of something that bothered me. Why are we having the convention then? They did it online. Why do this? Because it's all about show. It's not about substance.
Well, they're going to get to be on TV for 3-4 days. They're going to put forth all their leaders. They're going to put forth their candidate for president or candidate for vice president. It's a lot of free advertising. So they certainly want to go through with the convention. There's no question about that. I mean, the Republicans did the same thing in Milwaukee. But the Republicans, because they don't have the same significant influence on the news media as
Right.
the Democrats do. The Democrats fare so much better with the news media than the Republicans do. And now the Republicans have faults too, and particularly Trump, as I've said many, many times. I think he's a reprehensible character. I would never support him. I just wish that they had another candidate running that espoused the same things that he espouses, but didn't have his personality.
So this Democratic convention is just going to be a publicity stunt for 4 days leading up to Harris's unanimous endorsement of the American people, which will not be true, but and it's going to give her a positive bump. The media is going to use this to make her look good, and she's going to rise in the polls, I think. Don't you agree, over the next
No
4 or
question.
5 weeks?
Sure.
Before she makes a major drop.
If the election was held today, if the election was held 3 weeks after the Democratic convention, I believe she wins.
I agree.
That I don't know. It may turn into, once again, a toss-up, because ultimately she has to start talking about positions that she supports. And when she starts doing that, I believe she is going to start losing support. I know of several people who weren't supporting Biden, but are supporting her, but now they're learning things about her, and they are beginning to question whether or not they will continue to support her. Unfortunately, the alternative for the people is Trump, and so many people, just like myself, just cannot vote for him.
So and that's why I think the only answer is the one that you've already put forward, and that is, whoever the president is, the other party should control the House and maybe have at least equal presence in the Senate. And that type of checks and balances might actually save us at least for another 4 years. It's not going to solve our problem, but I think it will save us. I do think that Harris's big problem is, I don't know what she stands for. I don't know what her issues are. I know what the media is pushing. I know that she was involved in and supports this terrible immigration mess that we have in this country. And she seems afraid to get involved in the Middle East in a decisive way. She's trying to make everybody happy. And all you do when you try to make everybody happy, right, is to make everybody mad. Nobody gets happy when you try to take care of both sides. It just doesn't work.
Nope, very, very true.
Any final thoughts, Bill, at all, or issues?
I'm exhausted, Ray. My final thought is, Americans, please don't give up on your country. It's still the greatest country in the world. We have faults. Ray and I have certainly outlined the faults that both parties have today, but hang in there, become more involved in your government, and let us all pull together to save America.
And we don't want to add to the faults. We want people to recognize the faults and address them and correct it. The best way to be successful is to recognize your own faults, correct them, make them better, and move forward. That's one of the most successful ways to become a success, I think, in this country. I'm Ray Hanania.
I'm Bill Lipinski.
And this has been Two Guys on Politics. Next week, I think Bill and I are going to talk about the proposal to not tax Social Security, and we'll even talk about not taxing tipping. Let's maybe we'll look at that next week.
Yeah, and we'll actually try to find Robert Kennedy and see what he's doing, if he's doing anything any longer.
That would be great. All right, everybody. You guys have a great week. We will talk to you again. Bye-bye, everybody.